My name is Sylvia Paris Drummond. I'm the CEO for the Delmore Daye Learning Institute. The Viola Desmond Community Talks series carries on Viola's legacy of entrepreneurship, education, and social action, inspiring the leaders in all of us.
The pardon is the core of everything that came after. I was really surprised when I sit here and I'm talking to you and I feel it over that after that pardon, the tears are welling in my eyes. After that pardon, all these accolades came, and I'm surrounded by them, and I wish my mom was here, my dad, but anyway, and Viola herself, but it's amazing. I'm talking to you, and I can feel the welling up of amazement, if that can be said, because there's so many things have come along with this pardon, with Viola and her story.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for episode 3 of the Delmore Daye Learning Institute's Viola Desmond Community Talks. I am your host, Dr. Kesa Monroe Anderson. For the past 2 episodes, it's been my pleasure to explore with you the powerful legacy of African Nova Scotian change agent, entrepreneur, social justice activist, Black beauty culturalist, Viola Desmond. But first, we'll hear from some voices to provide us with some context around Viola Desmond's justice and entrepreneurship story.
It's clear that many people do not understand the difference of a free pardon and a regular pardon.
Right.
And in that sense, every time you hear somebody say Viola Desmond was pardoned, you have to stop them and say, no, she received a free pardon, because the free pardon is only granted to people who are innocent. And a regular pardon, is somebody who's committed a crime, guilty, served their time, now they're going to have a pardon. So, and in some ways, it's kind of good when they get that confusion, because it forces you to go and do some research and find out more, and then the conversation starts.
That's right.
But going on it happened on April the 15th, 2010. That was clearly a very historic day. And this is a book that was written by Viola's sister.
Yes.
And in here, at the appendix, they added in here the apology and a full explanation of the royal prerogative of mercy. They have the words that were used by Percy Paris, the words used by Ross Landry, who was the Minister of Justice, and then Darrell Dexter himself. So Ross Landry said that Mrs. Desmond was an innocent woman. In 1946, the Crown made an error. Now, the Crown, we're talking the prosecutor's office, right? And the time has come to right the wrong.
The Viola Desmond was one of the highlights of my career, and I was so happy to have played a role in the province and NDP government recognizing the injustice that was done to Viola Desmond, and more importantly, wasn't going to stand by in that history as dictated by non-Blacks, how it was going to impact our society, in particular reference with the African Nova Scotian community. Probably more important, the Viola Desmond free pardon came at a time in my life, like so many other things that happened in my life. It renewed my faith in the word hope, and how in the African Nova Scotian community, with without holding on to that value of hope, is that it's very, very difficult to survive in the Canadian society.
She was a woman from way back in that time. You would not be expecting a Black person to have all of the talents and intelligence and the vision that she had. People see her as an activist, but she was beyond that. She was an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur. She was also an educator, a successful educator. Yes. She was also, and I was reading about her, she also had a bit to do with real estate. Wow. So this is interesting because this is a woman that was well-rounded.
I think that up until 2010, up until the free pardon, I think Viola Desmond was somewhat of a secret. I think she was known in the Black community, but I think what happened with the free pardoning by the government of the day is that put her front and center. She became newsworthy internationally, and I think as a result of that act, I think hers, and I don't want to use the word status, but her story has gained so much momentum over the years, the recent years, the last 10 years. And I think it's going to continue to grow.
For you. Really, Viola Desmond was one of the first Black beauty advocates. I actually identify myself as a Black beauty advocate now. I've been, one of the things that I should say too is that this has been for me, when I was introduced to Viola Desmond, it was almost 35 years ago. So for me too, what it propelled me to do is to work on pretty much taking up a cross, pretty much, and work on delivering better hair services to the community, but also wanting to do more.
I think that Viola can still have that influence on people right now.
Absolutely.
And she does on various people. Miss Williams, her name is Kristen Williams, and she's the CEO of the Junior Chamber, right? And so she's the one that recommended that Viola be inducted into the Business Hall of Fame, which is important because when she first saw Viola's portrait in Government House, she was mesmerized by her.
I reflect back on the decision to learn about Viola. It didn't appear at first as though I was intentionally selecting her out of a group of women I wanted to study. I came upon her and I felt that this was an opportunity not only to include a brilliant, strong woman, but a woman of color in Canada, where arguably the history of management has been an American project. And it's been a project that's really been quite infused by patriarchy, by colonialism, and by gender. So the opportunity to give Viola a broader level of recognition so that she could not only be seen as this remarkable civil rights leader, but also as an industry building entrepreneur. And that's really what continued to drive my interest in writing about her and researching her. I quite frankly became smitten with her. She's just so incredible. She's very inspiring. And I felt if I could be inspired by her, certainly others would want to too. And in that developed in me a feeling of responsibility.
We're actually recognizing informal education that's been passed on to people in the community, from one generation to the other, and giving it a formal platform with the Nova Scotia Apprenticeship Agency. We're hoping that we'll get a positive response to the Black beauty culture here innovator apprenticeship. So once that's done, again, it would recognize informal education and giving it a formal platform.
Has she influenced others? I would say she actually did.
Yes.
A very close friend of mine who passed away, unfortunately, at a young age, at 59, Beverly Masco. Beverly Masco was born in Fall River, and she moved off to Toronto probably I don't know, when she was in 17 or 18, something like that. So she was living in Toronto for all those years. And the first time I heard Viola's name was from Beverly Masco.
Okay.
And I lived in Ontario in the late 90s, and it was Beverly who told me about that. And I met Beverly here when she was brought here to do a speech, and I was on the same agenda. And as soon as we met, we became friends. And when she told me about Viola Desmond, and that was incredible, and you should see how successful Beverly was. And I talk about Beverly in my book, and Beverly was just, her personality was almost very similar to Viola's.
Now, what I believe that Viola Desmond would say to Black beautician is, we own beautiful.
As we conclude this series at the end of the 2020-2021 school year, it is only fitting that our conversation focuses in on education, another passion of Viola Desmond. I am delighted to welcome to the show today, to continue this conversation on Viola Desmond, Senator Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard, a veteran educator, social worker, researcher, African Nova Scotian community activist, and trailblazer in her own right. Senator Thomas Bernard, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Monroe Anderson.
And as we get started, Senator Bernard, as you know, Viola Desmond was a brilliant and ambitious woman who believed in the importance of education, not only for herself, but for others, and particularly for African Nova Scotian and other African Canadian women. She was an excellent student, having graduated at the top of her class from Bloomfield High School. She earned her teaching certificate, then taught for almost 2 years. And in fact, there's a school in Milton, Ontario named after her, the Viola Desmond Public School. Viola Desmond then left her teaching career in public school to pursue her passion of becoming a beautician. She gained more training, most of which she received in the United States, because Black women were not welcome in the beauty schools, particularly in Nova Scotia, due to segregation. She then opened her own salon. Then she pursued and opened the only beauty school of its kind in the country, one that catered specifically to Black women and Black hair, the Desmond Studio of Beauty Culture. From your perspective, Senator, what does Viola Desmond's life and legacy teach us about the significance of education for African Nova Scotians, African Canadian communities in totality, and all people?
That's a really, really good introduction to some of the legacy of Viola Desmond and how that lives on across the country, really. You mentioned the Viola Desmond Public School in Milton, Ontario. I've not had the pleasure of visiting there. What you may not know is that there's also a Viola Desmond Public School in Ajax, Ontario.
All right.
It's very near where my daughter lives. When I heard about that school opening, I made a visit to them. It's about 2 years old now. And I've become one of their regular visitors. And one of the things that really excites me about the Ajax Viola Desmond Public School is the way in which that school board, they're in the Durham region, so it's part of the Durham Region School Board, but it's the way in which the leaders in that school have positioned the school to teach what they call the Viola Desmond values.
Awesome.
So they're teaching values of social justice. They're teaching the value of education, and thinking about education, not just for oneself, but an education that is inclusive of everyone, an education that teaches us about issues like injustice, so that we're producing young adults who contribute to a more socially just society. When you walk into that school, you see Viola Desmond's picture is there, but also these stated values that Viola Desmond clearly upheld. One of the things that she taught us through her life and through her life journey was that when you see an injustice, you do have some responsibility.
Yes.
To do whatever you can to correct it, to make change. The fact that Viola Desmond wasn't able to study beauty culture in Nova Scotia because of segregation didn't stop her from pursuing her dreams. And I think that that's one of the most significant lessons we can take from her life journey.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. I absolutely agree with you in terms of the example that school is setting, and quite fitting because the school is named after her, the one that you visited in Ajax, because the responsibility is ours to continue the legacy. It's one thing to focus in on what Viola Desmond did then, but the responsibility is on us to carry the torch as social justice champions and teaching this generation about what it means to be inclusive, and for our teachers and education system to teach us what inclusive education is all about. So that's amazing. And I like what you're saying about Viola Desmond's perseverance. What can she teach us even today in terms of perseverance when it comes to pushing past those systemic barriers that are still at play and still in place in educational institutions today in Nova Scotia and in this country, in Canada?
We know that those systemic barriers are still so very much entrenched in our society. If we wait for the systemic barriers to be removed to get on with our lives, we will never get on with our lives. So one of the lessons, again, from Viola Desmond is that you push through those barriers, that you never give up. You don't allow barriers to hold you back. And you don't accept failure as an option for your life. So we may fail. We may fall down. We will make mistakes. But it doesn't mean you give up. You find a way to keep going again. And when the doors are closed, find a way around, find a window that may be open.
Thank you.
But I think it's so vitally important that we position ourselves. And one of the greatest tools that we have access to position ourselves is post-secondary education.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. I truly appreciate all of the gems of wisdom that you're sharing with us, particularly when it comes to having the resolve to push beyond the barriers, to identify that barriers are in place, but to search for those windows when the doors are shut in our faces. Do you see any parallels between Viola's journey in education as a student, because we know that she had to push past many barriers as a student, then as an educator, and the impact she's had in this particular country? Do you see parallels between Viola Desmond's experiences and yours, your own life and experiences?
Absolutely. And where to even begin with that question? Yesterday, I participated in an interview on the afternoon CBC radio show in Ottawa, and they were focusing in on the honorary degree that I recently received from Carleton University for my work on social justice. So two things about that. One of the things about that interview, they reminded me, they did wonderful research, and they reminded me of an article that was in a local Halifax paper in 1969 about these 9 students from Halifax. I think we will call the Metro 9. And there were 9 of us that went to university that year, 3 of us from East Preston. And it was because of initiatives that were being pushed by the NSAACP. Some of the listeners may not even know that what that stands for. That organization was called the Nova Scotia Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That organization had members of our community, of the African Nova Scotian community, but also white allies who knew that if opportunities were created in post-secondary education, that some of our young people would not only engage in education for themselves, but engage in education that would allow them to reach back to their communities to bring others along. So when I think about that, and as I thought about that, I thought, I was given an incredible opportunity because I was only 15 years old at the time. Myself, my sister, who was 17, and our cousin, who was 18, the 3 of us were given an opportunity to go to Mount St. Vincent University. And that was so incredible because we were the first to go in a significant number. There were 9 of us who were entering universities, and we entered different universities at that time: Acadia University, Dalhousie, Mount St. Vincent are the 3 that immediately come to my mind. When I think about how I almost blew it, because I was so young and I didn't fully understand the opportunity that was being given to me. I truly didn't understand it. But one of the things that really helped me sort of get out of my own way, so to speak, was actually engaging in social justice initiatives. So I became part of Rocky and Joan Jones used to run this program called Kawacha House.
Yes.
And I remember sort of going and participating in programs that they were offering, understanding the gift of post-secondary education that we were given, and realizing that it was a responsibility not just for our individual growth and development, but also about our collective growth and development. We were the first number of people in our communities to have access to post-secondary education. That wasn't afforded to us at all. We had all gone to segregated schools for the primary school education. And then in high school, the segregated schools then put us into the integrated high schools. Those high school journeys were very, very racist and clearly not designed for us to leave those high schools to go on to post-secondary education. That was never an expectation.
Right.
The support that we were given for post-secondary education came from outside and largely from the NSAACP. And that was also the organization that assisted Viola Desmond.
That's right.
When she took that stand in the movie theater, when she said, enough is enough, enough is enough.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. I thank you for identifying education as a gift, but also as a gift that is nurtured also by community, and how community prepares us and nurtures us to be able to receive the gift of education while simultaneously providing other forms of education. You talked about Kawacha House, Rocky and Joan Jones, and the role that they played in your development, and the NSAACP. And I want to say congratulations to you on your honorary degree, the newest honorary degree that you received from Carleton. And we're just about to take a break, but we will be right back to talk more about the importance of education, the link between Viola Desmond and our own Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard, and particularly the link with community development and community consciousness. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the third episode of the Delmore Buddy Daye Learning Institute's Viola Desmond Community Talks. Today I'm speaking with Senator Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard, and we are focusing in on the connection between Viola Desmond's legacy and her passion for education. Senator Bernard, I hear a common Afrocentric theme, an Afrocentric refrain of community care and community consciousness woven throughout Viola Desmond's story as it regards her pursuit of education, again, not only for herself, but as a leader, developing her own school to provide African Nova Scotian, African Canadian women the opportunity to attend and enroll in beauty school. And we know that Black women traveled from as far as New Brunswick and Quebec to attend this school. This sounds very much like the work that you are doing in partnership with others in East Preston around the East Preston Empowerment Academy. Could you please tell us about this academy and the difference it's making in the lives of African Nova Scotians?
We are so excited about the work that's happening with the East Preston Empowerment Academy. So thank you for asking specifically about that. Just a moment, if I look back, when I think about Viola Desmond creating that school because programs weren't available to women of African descent, it's very similar to what we created. The East Preston Empowerment Academy was started really by Pastor Dr. Laquita Porter, who was then the pastor of the East Preston United Baptist Church. And she recognized the need for us to be doing something more specific to create educational opportunities for those who'd missed it the first time around. So we started the East Preston Empowerment Academy in 2014. And the goal was to equip members with the tools to enhance their skills, to enhance their qualifications, and therefore then to increase their employability through an accessible program, a program that was culturally specific, and a program that's based in the community. We are now located at the Akuma Center, so we're still in the Preston Township. We're not just open to people in the Preston area, we're open to anyone. And with many of our programs online now, we have a much bigger reach as well. Deloitte just completed an economic and social impact study of the East Preston Empowerment Academy. We've just received their report, so this is the first time for me to talk publicly about it. But in this very short period of time, from 2016 to 2020, just in 4 short years, we have contributed through the East Preston Empowerment Academy. We've contributed $1.02 million to the gross domestic product. $161,000 in government revenues. That's it. So not a lot of money coming into the organization, but a significant output. And $783,000 in labor income. And basically what that program is doing, what we're doing through our programs, is we're removing barriers to education. So people have a second opportunity, and we're strengthening labor market presence. We're strengthening the presence of African people in the labor market, and we're supporting and creating better employment opportunities for our participants. It's really been quite phenomenal when I think about what we've done in a very, very short time.
It is phenomenal, Senator Bernard. And I think about the fact that the last episode, in the second episode, I interviewed a beauty culturalist, Samantha Dixon Slaughter. And I understand that she was the first of that Empowerment Academy to graduate with her red seal. And in hairdressing. And that is, I see the connections with community, which you were talking about before, regarding, community development and the hand that community plays in providing that pathway for African Nova Scotians, people of African descent, to continue to pursue development in education and beyond. Even when I think about the title, East Preston Empowerment Academy, that sounds so inspirational. And it reminds me of the way Viola Desmond empowered so many Black women across Nova Scotia and beyond by providing them with the training that they needed in order to pursue their businesses as beauticians. So what can we learn from Viola Desmond about the role of African Nova Scotian Black women and the role that we play in empowering women and others across the province through education? I think it's no coincidence that you mentioned Pastor Laquita Porter, a Black woman, yourself, a senator, you're a Black woman, African Nova Scotian woman, and I would imagine that there are probably other Black women in the East Preston community who played a role, an instrumental role in starting this particular establishment, educational establishment, as well as helping it to succeed. So what do you think Viola Desmond's legacy is teaching us about this important role of African Nova Scotian and Black women as it regards leading in education?
Well, I'll just mention the other inaugural board members. One was Candace Thomas, my sister, who's now the Deputy Minister of the Department of Justice in Nova Scotia. Another was Elder Dr. Wayne Adams. He was the first African Nova Scotian to be in the provincial legislature. And Bradley Thomas, probably one of the first African Nova Scotian instructors at the Nova Scotia Community College. So our small group started that organization. I'm going to use the words of one of our participants as an example of the empowerment that's offered through the East Preston Empowerment Academy. This was from the Deloitte study. And one of the participants said, "The program gave me the willpower to go out and not be afraid to go back into the school system and pursue further education. EPEA was an encouragement and empowering force." When I see a quote like that, it makes me so proud of what we're doing, because it signals that the work we're doing is when we're creating this space for adult learners to return to educational programs to further their education. It's not just what they're doing in education, it's giving them the confidence and the willpower and the support that they need to do whatever it is they want to do in their lives. And that's so important because the barriers caused by systemic racism hold us back. The barriers caused by systemic racism make us doubt ourselves. The barriers caused by systemic racism truly make us feel that failure is all on us as individuals and not somehow tied to the structures around us. And if we can see failure in a broader light, then we can push past our individual failures to go on to achieve the greatness that's already predestined for us.
That's right. That's right. I like what you said earlier as well, in alignment with that we can't accept failure as an option. And I remember a research participant of mine in my PhD research who also spoke about the fact that her family, without really saying it, demonstrated to her that there was no room for failure. And I feel that this East Preston Empowerment Academy is that extension of family. You know, family goes beyond bloodlines in African Nova Scotian community, and there is that sense and that understanding that all the supports that you need are here to ensure that you succeed, because we must succeed, and we must carry on and and blaze a path for others. And I think about the connection between you as being a part of the Metro 9 Senator, and now you are empowering others. So you were empowered and you are empowering others through this East Preston Empowerment Academy. Thank you so much for sharing the quote from that particular student with us. We're beginning to hear more and more about, more people speak openly about intergenerational trauma that African Nova Scotians and African Canadians in general, Black people across the globe have encountered and experienced through the Great Maafa, the great tragedy of the institution of enslavement of African people, colonization, and just anti-Black racism in general. And this has all been well noted in the UN's Decade for People of African Descent report. They wrote a report, they visited Canada in 2016, and the report, I believe, was released in 2017, where those issues have been well documented. However, it's important for us to speak about intergenerational trauma, but we must also speak about the resilience of African Nova Scotian intergenerational survival. And I believe the Empowerment Academy in itself, and you, Senator, you represent intergenerational survival. And Viola Desmond's story underscores this. How can we educate others about intergenerational survival?
I think it's really important to talk about intergenerational survival. It's important for us to acknowledge our ancestors. I try to do that every single day, and I acknowledge that we stand on their shoulders. And on the days that things are really, really difficult, I draw strength from our ancestors. I made a tribute to Black women domestics in the Senate of Canada a few years ago, because I really believe that those women, they were denied opportunities, but they gave us so much. And I acknowledge my own mother as one of those women. My mother, Wanda Thomas Bernard, she wanted to be a teacher. And because of racism and sexism, she was not able to go on to further her own education. But she had the values, her values around education, her values around community development, her values around family have really helped position all of us in our lives. And as a domestic, she was able, and others like her, they were able to dream because they had this exposure to other women, other families, to books and magazines that they couldn't afford to have in their own homes. Many of them carried home the discarded magazines that their employers were throwing out. They didn't throw them out, they brought them home to give exposure to their children and their neighbors' children. And because of that, we live their dreams. We live their dreams. We live the dreams of our ancestors because they paved the way. And part of what we take from them, from their legacies, is actually the tenacity, the resilience, the capacity to make a way out of no way, and the ability to survive against the odds. And if our ancestors, our foremothers, could do what they did with little to nothing, then surely we can build on that and learn from that.
Thank you.
When I did that tribute, I'm sorry, Dr. Monroe Anderson, I just want to mention this. When I did that tribute to Black domestics, and then I posted it to social media, there were so many people that wrote to me thanking me for doing that, and they could see their own mothers and their mothers' mothers and their aunts and their neighbors. They could see them all in the story that I gave and the tribute that I paid to these incredible women. who laid the foundation for us to follow.
Yes. Yes, Senator, thank you very much for sharing with us the legacy of your mom. And you are certainly living her hopes and her dreams. And we're all very grateful for every deposit that she placed in you, because it's a blessing to all of us today. So many, many more than your mom would have ever imagined. And so we think about education then, even beyond formal education, as the informal and non-formal ways that our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunties, and other mothers in community have taught us and encouraged us. We will speak more about that right after this break. Welcome back to the Viola Desmond Community Talks. I'm speaking with Senator Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard, and we are talking about education and the connection between Viola Desmond's passion for education and Senator Bernard's life and experiences, and as well the connections between the two, and also the rich community legacies and the promise of continued development because of community. And Senator Bernard, I want to thank you again for sharing your mom's story with us, and the importance of us digging into our mother's gardens, which is the way that Alice Walker, she put it in an essay from the 1970s. The essay was entitled In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, and I've always been intrigued by that, and it stayed with me since I read it during my undergraduate degree program at Acadia University some years ago. I love how Walker emphasizes the importance of us as Black women and Black people in general, paying particular attention to the skills, the abilities, the resilience endowed to us by our mothers and our other mothers, if you will, particularly those whose dreams were hindered, like your mothers, because of anti-Black racism and other gender barriers. I see Viola Desmond as a form of other mother for us as African Nova Scotian, African Canadian women, and within African Canadian history and Canadian history in general. Who are the other mothers? You spoke about your mom, or you can feel free to speak more about your mom, and the other mothers in your life who have played an important role in shaping you into the national leader and the woman of influence you are today.
My mother would certainly be at the top of that list. And part of why she was so significant, I would say, is because of the fact that she was widowed at the age of 39. And she had 10 children of her own, plus she was raising 2 of her grandchildren. Plus, at one point, one of her godchildren came to live with us. That's a lot on anyone. And the youngest in our family was only 18 months old. And when I think about the fact that Mom kept us all together, and she labored, she was a domestic. She was a domestic. How do you do that? I can still almost hear her crying sometimes at night. When I think about her and the trauma she must have been feeling and the fear she must have been feeling, but she kept going. So her strength and her ability to just keep moving forward, and she was a very spiritual person, so her spirituality really, really kept her going when things were very, very difficult.
Thank you.
So she's one of the people. There was a neighbor that lived next to us. Her name was Alita Pelly. And she looked after our younger siblings, but I spent an incredible amount of time with her. I'd go to pick up my younger siblings when I got home from school, but I'd stay and spend some time with her as well. And she was really quite phenomenal. And then another woman who really stands out as an other mother for me was Sister Marjorie Fairfax from the Victoria Road Baptist Church. She was phenomenal. She and her husband, Reverend Dr. Donald Fairfax, the two of them together, they were like other mother and other father for me and for many people. Just that very solid presence. And that's what you want in a other mother who's sort of like a mentor. You want them to be present, to be there, to be available when you need support. And I would say that one of the things that I've learned through these relationships was that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to acknowledge that you need help. And those women certainly helped me to own that and claim that.
That's beautiful. It's amazing. And as you were speaking, I could reflect on my own life, and I could name my mother and so many other women as well in community and church who nurtured me. And like you said, Mom played the role of keeping us together. And the other mothers and the other father as well, in terms of their presence and their support, which is so important in mentorship and developing and nurturing the next generation. Viola Desmond also took on a huge responsibility to fill a need, to fill a gap in service when she identified that she herself had no opportunity within Nova Scotia to attain the training that she wished to attain as a beautician. And she provided an opportunity for Black women in this province and beyond by creating her own Black beauty school. She did this in the 1930s, early 1940s, and to date there's been no other school of its kind in Nova Scotia, and I would dare say even in many places beyond Nova Scotia. So what is our obligation? You talked about your mother, and she poured into you, and other women poured into you. Their hopes and dreams are now being realized in many African Nova Scotians like yourself. So what is our responsibility in 2021 as it regards the development of education, particularly for African Nova Scotians and other people of African descent?
I believe that our obligation is really to what I call lift as we lead. The education that we receive is not an education just for our own personal benefit. That education is truly valued when it's shared with others, when that education can be used to help bring others along, or to inspire others, or to create space for others to develop their own capacities and their own abilities. So I believe that our obligation is to do whatever we can to make things better. Far too many of us recognize when things are going wrong, but we don't recognize that we have a role to play in terms of addressing what we see as being wrong or what we see as being unjust. I'd love to see more civic engagement amongst people of African descent in Nova Scotia. I'd like to see people more involved, taking their place in different organizations, in different roles and capacities, preparing themselves for different opportunities, but also stepping in and being willing to put themselves out there.
Yes, lifting as we lead, that's crucial. And had it not been for others who did the same, many of us would not be. I would say none of us would be where we are today. That's crucial. The reciprocity principle, that's a part of Afrocentricity and a part of Black communities wherever we go in the globe. So we must do whatever we can to make things better for others. What advice would
Exactly.
you give? Sandra, what advice would you give to younger people and the young at heart, others who are thinking about pursuing further education, or even, like Viola Desmond, after pursuing further education, maybe opening their own educational institution to fill gaps? But these folks may be feeling daunted by the barriers standing in their way. And as we close this interview today, what advice would you give to these people?
I would say it's okay to dream. And then the next step is working the dream.
Yes.
So if you have a dream to be a scientist, let's say, it doesn't happen automatically. So then you need to learn, so what do I have to do to prepare myself to be where, and to do that role, whatever it is, or if it's to own a business or to set up a school, to set up a program. What do I need to get there? And what help and support do I need along the way? And to be willing to seek help. I think I've said that several times.
Yes.
So I think there's a message there. Being willing to seek help, but hard work. No matter what you want to achieve in life, you won't get there without hard work. And I think we're part of a microwave generation. We want things quickly. Let's put that aside. The value of hard work is certainly a value that I learned and took from my mother and her mother before her. And that's a value that I want to pass on to young people today. That it's okay to work hard. Expect to need to work hard.
Yes.
And do it. Don't be afraid of the barriers. Push through them. Seek the support you need. And you'll do it.
You'll do it. You will do it. I believe that. Senator Bernard, thank you for that advice. We must work the dream. We must not be afraid to ask for support. And we must not be afraid of hard work as well, and not expect that our dreams will be accomplished, in the blink of an eye, but that we will need to work together with others and get that support and encouragement and pursue hard work in order to accomplish the dream, just as Viola Desmond did. I can only imagine the many hours that she poured into the development of her school, the development of the cosmetic products that she provided specifically for Black women, and going door to door as well across Nova Scotia to sell those products and to provide them to others so that they too could learn from and feel beautiful and to see themselves reflected as beautiful. There's a proverb that I love, an African proverb, and many people know this. It's a popular one, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I believe your life, Senator, and that of Viola Desmond reflect that proverb, the importance of how you were developed by your community, by the other mothers and the other fathers in your community, and how you are now leading, taking that forward by providing ways and opportunities for others in many respects. I want to thank you, Senator, for your time today, and thank you for all that you've shared with us and all that you will continue to do to lift as you lead. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you who are watching with us today. And we pray that you will also continue to be inspired by Viola Desmond's rich legacy, and to look around you in your community for those Viola Desmonds that are still with us, to learn and to be inspired by them. Thank you for joining us.